Hey YouTube, welcome back to another video. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Okay, down to business. So I've been wanting to talk to you guys about this topic for a minute. It's at least a week. I was supposed to bring this to you guys, but life and I will do better. Life and I will do better. Okay, glory be to God. He is patient with me. All right. So, the topic to discuss that I want to discuss with you guys is don't look back. Yep. Don't look back there. Don't look back. Don't do it. Don't do it. So let's go ahead and go into the reasons why one shouldn't look back. And there can be a lot of reasons why, a lot of things that we shouldn't look back to. I think the biggest thing in most people's lives is the what they do on a daily day-to-day basis. So their habits, whether it be their career, their job, and the relationships they're in. 9 times out of 10, they're more likely to either stay in there, depending on your generation, stay in there no matter maybe what God tells you, or no matter what is best for you. They'd stay in there compared to following the will of God. Um, so let's go into some reasons for why you have to take heed to the season and the environment you're in. And if God tells you to leave, you know, there are some reasons why we do look back, so there may be some reasons why um, that relationship, you shouldn't be in, or that job you shouldn't be at, that party you shouldn't be at, that neighborhood you shouldn't be at. Like, maybe there's some reasons why you shouldn't go back, but you do anyways. And we're gonna kind of go into the reasons why we look back. All right, so let's go into the first reason why. Um, so the first reason why we tend to look back, and this is same for me too, familiar habits, familiar or habitual habits. So essentially, you're familiar with the people you're around. You're familiar with the day-to-day tasks you have. Everything is, you have a schedule. You're sticking to it, and you're used to it. So you're not gonna want to change it. 9 times out of 10, ultimately nobody likes change. And let me tell you what the root of this is. The root of the fear here is scare of change. We're scared that the alternative that God has for us, or the alternative that is presented to us, is will require a changing of behaviors. And it's a lot easier to keep your current habits than it is to come up with new habits and be consistent and disciplined in them. So that is the first reason. Second one is sometimes you rather fight the enemy you know than enemy you don't. You know, we've all been there. We've all been there. For example, if you have a boss that you know is micromanaging, or if you have a coworker that you know is um, setting you up for failure, feeding you wrong information purposely, or doesn't want you to go advance above them, so they're not really teaching you. If you have a friend who is tolerating you instead of accepting you, you kind of know where you stand. You know where you stand. Um, if you'll be looked at a certain way if you're riding in one whip in the BMW compared to the Toyota. If you know that you will get the looks, if you get any type of cosmetic change, you know that the hate that you may or may not receive, but you also know what the good you'll receive also. So it's like people prefer to have the enemy they know than to encounter other enemies that they will have to maneuver and protect themselves from. So this fear is a fear of new enemies. So the third one we have here is, well, what if it doesn't work out? What if I don't succeed in this new area that God is taking me? We've all been there. For example, like, imagine like be in your kids' shoes, them transitioning from middle school to high school. What if the big kids don't like me? What if the classes are too hard? We all deal with the fear um, of if things don't work out. So that would be fear of failure. But a little caveat to that one is, well, what if it does work out? What if I am this person that God told me I really am? What does that mean? How will my life have to change? How will I have to change my habits to be successful in this area? What if I am good? Like, what if I am good at dancing, but I may not be able to get paid as much as I would if I were to continue to be a lawyer. But this is where God is asking me to go. Right. So the fear of failure and the fear of success, they kind of go hand in hand in a sense of where you're self-sabotaging yourself and you're questioning those what ifs that nobody but God has the answer to. So that's a third reason why tend to go back to we tend to look back to where God has told us to remove ourselves from. All right, now so let's go into some of the consequences of looking back, or in other words, the consequences of not leaving environments, relationships, situations that God has told you is not for you and not grace for you and just not the best for you, but you continue to go back. So let's go over some consequences that, that we all will face as a result of looking back. The first one is bondage. So in regards to bondage, it essentially means you're held captive in the current lifestyle you're in. For example, say weigh if you are obese and you're unable to keep up with your kids, if you have younger kids, you're unable to keep up with them. You're in bondage. You're in bondage due to the food choices you eat. Another item is you have a very stressful job that isn't the best for you, but you continue to do it and work in that environment, knowing it's not good for your mental health. You're in bondage. You go out every Saturday night, but you want to have a relationship and start going to church and have a relationship with God and start going to church on a steady basis. But you can't wake up on Sunday because you're hungover from the night before. I've been there, so I'm not judging anybody at all. But that's bondage. And 9 times out of 10, the bondage that we're in is we're holding ourselves captive. Nobody else is holding us captive. God gave us the free will to make the decisions and choices that He has placed in our hearts, our passions. He's given us the free will to either accept or to deny. So if you are in bondage, 9 times out of 10 is because you are holding on to something that you know isn't good for you, but ultimately you're holding yourself captive. And you know what they say, the enemy is the enemy. So the second consequence of looking back is delay or stagnation in your progress in life. In your life journey, you're delayed and stagnated. And one thing I do want to say is that before we were made, God knew us, right? So he has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. So us not being in accordance to his will, in accordance to the passions that he's placed in our hearts, it is going to delay the fruits of the spirit within you, the gifts and the blessings that he has for you. And the third one is consequences of looking back is death. So we don't know what all God is saving us from on a day-to-day basis. We know that this world is evil. Um, we know the world is evil. So if God tells you not to make that right turn when you're driving, don't make that right turn. If He tells you, if you go back to this relationship, you will be severely hurt, listen to Him. We don't know, and through God's grace and mercy, we don't know, because a lot of the situations we put ourselves in would be the direct consequences of our actions. However, God still has grace and mercy for those He loves, or all His children. So we could be facing death if we decide to look back. So let's go into some Bible references, some Bible examples to kind of further paint a picture of the consequences and what happened when looking back. So let's see. The first one we have here is Exodus 14, 10 through 12. And let me go back and let you guys know, like catch you guys up what happened was happening preceding 14, 10, 12. So ultimately, the Israelites were in captivity by the Egyptians, um, and they were severely treated. They were treated very poorly, and the Lord heard their cries, and He remembered the covenant that God had with Abraham, and with Abraham's descendants, as they are all descendants of Abraham, and He remembered the promises, the covenants that He made with him to prosper them, right? So He called on Moses, and He told Moses to tell the Pharaoh in Egypt to let my people go. After multiple different situations where God had to really show who He was, the Pharaoh finally let him go. But, of course, unfortunately, people don't like to lose. So this is one of the cases where Pharaoh's heart was hardened because he wanted to keep the Israelites as slaves, and he had absolutely no regard for their well being at all. Um, so let's go to Exodus 14, 10 through 12. Here it says, as Pharaoh approached the Israelites, looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. It says they were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, what was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. So here, despite God bringing them out of captivity, bondage, the Israelites wanted to go back. They were so willing to put up with the harsh treatments from the Israelites, hardships, that we all face. Despite God's blessings, we all face hardships. They weren't willing to go through those hardships in the wilderness. So the Israelites were willing to go back into captivity to serve the Egyptians than to what they told Moses than to die in the desert. So my take on this is you'd rather die in Egypt, die as an Egyptian slave than die while in the wilderness. So they were more willing to put up with and sacrifice the life God had always destined for them to have by returning to Egypt. So this is a clear example of being in bondage, mentally being in mental bondage, and being more trusting of the enemy than the one you don't, because I guess they that in the Egyptians, they're harsh to you, they're going to treat you wrong, but what you do day to day and how to stay from under their thumb. However, in the desert, like, I don't know what's coming my way. The Egyptians are still after me. Now I'm thirsty. Now I'm tired. It's hot out here. Where, they're pretty much just like, they're like, where is God? But despite the fact that He showed up for them over and over and over again, they were still willing to be in that bondage and not have trust in God. And when we think about this, say if they would have returned back to Egypt, the consequence would have been a delay and stagnation in the return of Jesus Christ, right? But that is why God works so hard to get us to different places, to get us to places that He knows is best for us. Because, like I said, He has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. And He knows where we need to be. He knows the habits we need to let go, the sins we need to let go, the people, places, things we need to let go. So I think that's why His grace and mercy is unmatched. It's unmatched. So let's go into another example of looking back. And the Israelites did end up making it to the promised land, but of course they complained. All right, so for the next biblical reference, let's go to, and I think a lot of you guys know this story. This is a story of Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed, and essentially the consequences of one looking back. So it'll be good to read the entire um, Genesis 19, but let's specifically focus on Genesis 19:23 through 26. So just to catch everyone up on what was going on here. God has sent angels to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of their sinful ways. So ultimately, here Abraham was informed that by angels, or by God himself, the Holy Spirit, that Sodom and Gomorrah would be destroyed, and he asked the angels to spare Lot, which is his nephew. The angels went in, they warned Lot, and they told him to grab your family, grab everyone. This city is going to be destroyed. So let's go ahead and read Genesis 19:23 through 26. Here it says, by the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. So while fleeing, instead of being obedient, Lot's wife looked back. And as a result, she was turned into a pillar of salt and died as a result. So here Lot and his family were given direct instructions on what would happen if they were to either stay in Sodom and Gomorrah or to look back. So if you go to Genesis 19:15, it says, with the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, hurry, take your wife and your two daughters and your two daughters who are here, or you will be swept away in the city when the city is punished. So that was a clear warning that swept away, you will die. You will die if you stay here. Unfortunately, Lot's wife looking back is a clear example of what can happen when God is warning you of what the consequences will be if you continue to be on the path that you're on. And in this instance, we can blame no one but ourselves, unfortunately. And one note I do want to say is that as you further deepen your relationship with God and you become in tune with the Holy Spirit, he will give out certain warnings of where you should and shouldn't go, ventures you should and shouldn't take. It's important to ask him daily what his will is for your life. It's important to ask him for his protection. In doing so, he's able to either prepare the way for you, or he's able to warn you of what you may face as you follow the will that he has for your life. Or even if you choose not to follow the will, the Holy Spirit will speak to you. So that is one of the gifts we all have. All of his believers, we all have the gift of the Holy Spirit to guide us through life. All right, so the final note I want to make here is that when we are determining what decisions to make in life, we have to think about the spirits that are coming about within us, right? So do you have a spirit of fear? Do you have a spirit of rejection? Or do you have a spirit of hope? Do we have a spirit of faith? That will guide your decisions, and any of the harmful spirits, rebuke those spirits and call on the Spirit of God to help guide you, because that's what he's here for. He loves us. That is what he's here for. When choosing not to look back, when choosing to live out the purpose that God has for you, this is where your trust and faith in God is going to be needed, right? So if you're not fully all the way there yet, this is your time to prove not only to yourself, but to God that you do trust, love, and have faith in the will that he has for you and for your life. And this process may or may not be easy for some, depending on how long you've been walking with God and how long you've been following his will for your life. But ultimately, I just want to motivate everyone before I leave that don't look back. Continue to look forward. that which is behind you for a reason, right? And if it's going to delay the progress, and it's going to delay your destiny, and it's going to keep you from reaching the mark that God has for you, you need to let it go. You need to let it go. There are greater things in store ahead of you than behind you. I think it's Jeremiah 29. I'll post here, but God has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. So, in that, we have to know that He wants the best for us. He wants to protect us. He wants to guide us. And He wants us to build a relationship with Him. We do have a jealous God. So, with that being said, keep moving forward, keep progressing, keep living life to the fullest. And until we meet again, don't forget to like, share, comment, and until next time.